Here we see a darling specimen, the Curioshell crab. Notice its golden exterior. The crab searches its environment for metals to adorn itself, both for protection and possibly as part of mating behavior. As all life is wont to do, the Curioshell crab seeks to reproduce, but their vanity is their own demise. Hunters have begun capturing these crafty Carapaceons for the pre-century currency collected on their chitin. In recent years, their numbers have dwindled. It is rare to ever catch a glimpse of this gilded gem of the Forbidden Lands. Should you sight one in the wilds, take care to leave it undisturbed, as you may be seeing the last member of a soon-to-be extinct species. Oh, my Palico producer has a note? What? Around the corner? Oh. Well. Can't be too rare then.
All about being adaptable.
Welcome back, hunters. Now I know what you're thinking. Didn't I click on a siege monster theory video? Why is he doing a poor David Attenborough accent looking at crabs? And to that I say, can't it be both? That's right. Today I want to speculate about the potential, hopefully coming soon, siege monster. Now, nothing has been officially announced, but if you check out my previous video, I discussed the possibility of a new siege monster getting added, perhaps as soon as Title Update 3, due out the end of September. And I don't mean new to Wilds, I mean new, brand new, a new monster to the franchise that doubles as a siege monster. And I speculate that this little endemic life may be a small breadcrumb leading us to the next major monster addition. Either that or my obsession with this cute little guy has me huffing copium. In either event, this is very much a theory video where I want to explore the idea of a new monster of my own creation, but rooted in the Wilds lore, based on in-game information, some slight stretches of logic, probably some major stretches of logic, and just elements that I think would add diversity or cool mechanics to the game. If my predictions are wrong, it would not surprise me, but if they are right, I would be ecstatic. This all comes down to the Curioshell crab. My theory hinges on this endemic life, the real-world science behind crustaceans, the ancient Wyverian coins that they carry, the implication of those coins, and funny enough, Monster Hunter World and the siege monsters they introduced. So let's kick things off with the Curioshell crab. Per its description in the Endemic Life Field Guide, they are crabs that have retained their ancient appearance and are bigger than their standard brethren. They flee at full speed the instant they spot a foe, not bothering to camouflage themselves. Instead, they heap metal objects onto their carapaces, which are thought to be artifacts from ancient civilizations. This passage is interesting for a few reasons. Number one, it states that they have retained their ancient appearance. This is actually related to a real scientific concept called Carcinization, which in super simple terms is when a non-crab crustacean species evolves to be more crab-like, an indication that evolutionarily the crab is a preferred or superior organism for the purposes of reproduction and survival. That being said, there are examples of the reverse happening in real life, and this concept only applies onto non-true crab crustaceans. However, the implication here is that the Curioshell crab have existed for a long time in this current state, meaning that they are well adapted to their environment. The second item of note is the detail about their shells. Again, the statement verbatim is, they heap metal objects onto their carapaces, which are thought to be artifacts from ancient civilizations. Funny enough, this could be interpreted two ways. Either the objects placed on the shells are the artifacts, or the shells themselves are the artifacts. Jokes aside, it is apparent what the developers intended with this sentence, and the mechanics reflect this. Capturing or otherwise damaging the Curioshell crab will result in providing an ancient Wyverian coin, or rather, the artifacts from ancient civilizations. This coin is described as bearing a delicate etched relief, which we can see when inspecting the coin up close. This coin is a physical in-game representation of much of the symbolism we see both in and outside of the game. I want to take a whole other video to dive into the symbolism and speculate as to its importance, but as for my siege hunt theory, the dots we can connect are thus. Curioshell crabs are no different now than they were in ancient times. They use these coins to decorate their shells, and the coins themselves are from ancient civilizations. So why is all of that important? Well, let's look at how else we can acquire coins. Besides the Curioshell crab, we can find coins scattered throughout the Forbidden Lands in various areas, lying on the ground or in the water. Along with this, some locations, when they become damaged or changed, give a chance to find a coin as well. The other notable place we can find the coins are from our favorite philosophical woodwood, Rove, who will frequently trade for them, typically seeking goblet weed or the more rare chalice weed, which can be found en masse in his native Scarlet Forest. Again, why does this matter? Follow along with me now as I put all these pieces together. As all the sources of ancient coins are random, I began to look at the patterns that each of the elements presents. Working backwards, the traders will supply either village-specific items like the meal ingredients, or they will trade for things that can be found in their environment. The fact that Rove is the only trader who gives ancient Wyverian coins would indicate there is a plethora of them in the Iceshard Cliffs. Now, why would this be? We can find ancient Wyverian coins in every location, as well as the Curioshell crabs. Interestingly enough, looking at all of the locations where they can spawn, the highest amount of coins and crabs combined is in fact the Iceshard Cliffs, with a maximum of 15 potential locations between the two. We know based on the name and the description between the item and endemic that the ancient coins were made by an ancient civilization and most likely used as some form of currency. With this in mind, we now have the final questions to ask. Why are we able to find ancient coins everywhere and seemingly without limit? This is my theory. The Curioshell crabs have existed at least since the ancient inhabitants of Wyveria were alive and prospering, as evidenced by elements in the various locales and the wormways that branch from the Dragontorch. The people of Wyveria had created villages all across the Forbidden Lands. Any commerce that occurred was most likely supported by the currency of Wyverian coins, which would explain why they can be found in every area. However, it has been 1,000 years since Wyveria fell to ruin, and we do not see any of the current population of the Forbidden Lands using the Wyverian coins as money. This would mean that the coins we can find on the ground are probably not artifacts left over from ancient times, but rather the direct result of the standard crab life cycle. Part of crab growth involves the process of molting, where a crab sheds its exoskeleton shell and produces a new one. During this process, the crab becomes soft and much easier prey for predation. I believe the crabs shed their shell and leave behind the ancient Wyverian coin as they flee. Lastly is the frequency of crabs and coins in the Iceshard Cliffs. Being that the cliffs are more or less the rampart of what was the ancient city of Wyveria, it makes sense that the Curioshell would exist here in greater numbers, as most likely the concentration of the ancient currency would exist in the capital. And it is this nugget of knowledge that sparked my theory. Any civilization that has amassed wealth has some sort of depository or vault where the physical wealth is kept, and I theorize Wyveria is no exception. Somewhere deep in the bowels of Wyveria, I believe exists a massive stockpile of ancient Wyverian coins. This vault has been otherwise undisturbed for a millennia, as no inhabitants of the Forbidden Lands dare enter the epicenter of the greatest historical disaster they've ever known. With one exception: a small Carapaceon. One that has evolved to seek out ancient relics, one that can maneuver in small cramped places, one that can survive in any environment. The Curioshell crab most likely found the horde of Wyveria, and it became a generational breeding ground where they would mate. Once entering adolescence, they would begin the process of adorning their shells with the ancient coins and seek out food elsewhere in the Forbidden Lands, as the harsh, chilling climate of the Iceshard Cliffs is probably not as conducive to food. Upon reaching sexual maturity, they migrate back to the vault to breed, and the cycle begins again. Because of this ebb and flow of the crabs and their penchant for pilfering coinage, the stockpile in the vault has now slowly dwindled as the crabs have molted outside of their breeding grounds. In addition to this, between us hunters and a couple of dedicated woodwoods, the cache of coins scattered throughout the Forbidden Lands is also threatened, meaning the crabs have even more reason to return to the vault, explaining why we seem to have a never-ending supply of these coins. That wraps up my theory on the Curioshell crabs, but what about the siege monster? I know it's been a bit of a journey to get here, but here is what I imagine. Long before the fall of Wyveria, there was a branch that grew away from the Curioshell crabs as we know them today. A separate one from the Florishells and the Crude Shells. This branch, perhaps as a result of encountering Wyvern's milk, or interactions with the Dragontorch energy, or perhaps through the natural evolution process of decarcinization, became more hermit crab-like, growing into small monsters like the Hermitaurs. And perhaps this process did not stop here. We have examples of large hermit crab monsters in the form of Daimyo Hermitaur or Shogun Ceanataur. Perhaps this creature became a large monster, one that did not have any natural enemies, and it could continue to grow unfettered, especially if it remained unscathed after the reign of Wyveria. A feat not impossible, as some crabs do burrow for protection during the molting process. This monster, despite its physical change, did not lose its evolutionary behavior. Its decarcinization meant rather than finding ancient artifacts to place on its shell, it needs to find a material that it can use to house its body. We have precedent for this currently, as the Hermitaur use Monoblos and Diablos skulls as shells, the Ceanataurs use Gravios or Glavinus skulls as shells, and even Shen doing the same with Lao Shen Lung or Acantor skulls. But this souped-up Curioshell crab wouldn't want just any skull. It would have to be big enough to house its body and protect it from predators. It would need to be located somewhere deep or underground. It would need to be durable and double as a weapon. But most importantly, it would need to be like the ancient artifacts it once used, metal. While this laundry list of conditions seems impossible to meet, there is one monster that I feel qualifies, and she was introduced in Monster Hunter World, the mother goddess of gold herself, Kulveteroth. Were our theoretical crab to locate the remains of one such precious metal-encrusted elder, its skull along with its gold-plated horns would make for a perfect home to this new unknown large monster of the Carapaceon family. The crab, having survived the Zoshia incident, may have found a new home underground, perhaps even in the vault itself where its ancestors had scrounged for resources, now unfettered by both Zoshia as well as the surface population of Wyveria. This king of crabs, relying on an underground ecosystem sparked to life by the wormways and living for perhaps centuries with a form of biological immortality as seen in some varieties of real-world crustaceans, could in theory have survived, until one faithful day when hunters stumble upon this Goldilocks zone buried deep beneath the city of Wyveria, behind and below the buttresses that once protected all of an ancient civilization, now nothing more than a remnant of a bygone era. Allow me to introduce the Emperor Metataur. This crustacean creation would add the Carapaceon skeleton to Wilds, a skeleton we have yet to see in a large monster this generation. As for the elements of the fight, we can speculate based on existing mechanics as well as some of the material we supposed up to this point. Siege monsters of the past generation existed in their own map locales, such as the Caverns of El Dorado or the Secluded Valley. So too would the Emperor Metataur need its own environment, and it very easily could be something brand new. But I feel like it would be more enjoyable were it the already partially existing area we can see and slightly experience should we make the manual transition between the Iceshard Cliffs and the ruins of Wyveria, the actual city of Wyveria proper. The labyrinthine buildings would make for an interesting environment to fight in, especially if the environment was destructible. Much in the same way as monsters recent as Jindahad, I could see the Metataur moving from one arena to the next as the fight progresses, perhaps sharing similar mechanics to Kulve and Safi'jiiva, where our job involves breaking off layers of armor to expose the true monster underneath. The final last stand arena could be my theorized bunker of treasure where the conclusion of the fight could occur. Again, to borrow from prior siege hunts, the monster would have soft DPS checks whereby if enough damage is not done, they escape, and the fight would need to be continued another day. Being that this fight is occurring in the ancient city itself, I would like to see this fight go through stages like past sieges, but maybe without the siege weapons. While I don't have hard data, players in World seemingly did not enjoy the first phase of Kulveteroth in that it was a lot of external tool use like ballistae or cannons, while Kulve herself seemed disinterested in fighting. I would hope a new siege monster would eliminate this stage, either encouraging the use of our traditional weapons or simply altering the fight from a 4-stage fight to a 3-stage fight. Jindahad already suggests this change as being implemented, as the only external methods of damaging him are in the form of environmental traps or a pseudo-turf war scenario with the Hirabami. He also suggests the return of the enmity mechanic originally used in the Behemoth mission, which returned again for the siege hunt against Safi'jiiva. Altogether, I envision this. Our team of hunters receives some clue as to a new, not yet discovered monster. It could be as simple as discovering a new area opened up, or perhaps Gaudigog, the trader Woodwood from the Scarlet Forest, would spark a mission quest that leads up to the fight, specifically him, as his affinity for the ancient Wyverian coins is unmatched. Upon narrowing down the clues to the point where we can actually engage with the siege hunt, we would be informed that the monster has eluded hunting parties and that all teams, Avis, Astrum, Rubrum, Turris, and Vespe, would all be deployed to search and verify the monster's existence. This could be used as a scout mission in the same way that the first Safi'jiiva mission was revealed, acting as a sort of tutorial mission to relay the mechanics of the fight to the players. As for potential mechanics, the inclusion of Kulve Teroth's horns and the plate mechanic could return from World. Breaking the plating would lead to extra carves, with the breaking of the horns leading to even more. To be frank, the parallels between my new Metataur and Kulve herself are not lost on me, but I am not suggesting a random weapon system like in World. The Emperor Metataur, having lived in and around the ancient Wyverian coin stockpile, would perhaps have part or wound breaks that include these precious coins, allowing for farming. As well as this, the various loot pools could include the existing or even a higher tier of precious metals like the orichalcite used in the reinforcement process for Ardean weapons. Should a weapon system be included, the Kulve skull horns could be used as a method of gaining these weapons, but rather than a dozen or more per weapon type, a simple addition of 1 or 2 each would suffice. Perhaps the relic weapons from 4 could be introduced in this way. Or maybe the Metataur could drop some material that allows hunters to bypass the table for Ardean reinforcement, and either guarantee or at the very least influence the outcome beyond its predetermined role. I would also appreciate a new weapon for every weapon type that directly correlates to the Emperor Metataur, meaning one made from his pieces. This seems to be a staple of title update monsters, but past sieges have introduced random weapon drops for the respective monsters, whereby one is not made but rather obtained. Depending on if Capcom implements a random weapon system or not, would most likely dictate how the weapon system would play out. All in all, Capcom has a large request to fill in the way of this next-gen siege hunt. Whether they had this idea for my Emperor Metataur and left these little hints or not remains to be seen, but probably not. Regardless of whether they implement a siege hunt in Title Update 3 or 4, or maybe not even until the expansion, is all up to Capcom, and all we can do is theorize, give feedback, and hope. Which is now what I ask all of you to do. Comment your theories in the comment section, provide feedback on my theory, what did you like, what did you not, and I hope you would consider subscribing to my channel and or my Patreon and keep us going strong. Until next time, may your RNG be kind and the desire sensor be blind. Goodbye for now, but not for long.